up, everyone? We're your internet historians, and we are back for another episode. In today's episode, we will be discussing the history behind the movie The Blind Side. So, Michael Oher, a homeless black teen, has drifted in and out of the school system for years. Then, Leanne Toohey and her husband, Sean, take him in. The Tooheys eventually become Michael's legal guardians, transforming both his life and theirs. Michael's tremendous size and protective instincts make him a formidable force on the gridiron, and with help from his new family and devoted tutor, he realizes his potential as a student and football star. So, what'd you think, Alec?
Woohoo. Um, it was okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't watched this movie probably since it came out. I don't know, wasn't too exciting. I mean, there were some parts that were kind of, a tear jerker a little bit. You're just like, you really felt for him and felt for Leanne, but I don't, I don't know if I would go so far to say as this is like a great award-winning movie as it was.
Yeah,
This
definitely.
movie came out in 2009 and Sandra Bullock won an Oscar for it, and I mean it was good, but I don't know. I guess it just didn't really seem like groundbreaking to me or
Mhm.
anything.
Definitely. I can agree with that. I mean, like, it's not a, like, it's entertaining. It's like, definitely one
Yeah.
of those inspirational, I guess, sports movies, but I totally agree. I can't really see this having won as many awards as it did.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, I mean, yeah, it is what it was. Like, like,
Yeah. It's like what
it
you said
wasn't,
is inspirational and
yeah,
that's that.
yeah. It wasn't like, oh my God, this and that and whatever. And one of the things I read online was saying that this is the movie that put like Sandra Bullock like on the map basically. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure she was
What?
famous before this movie. What?
Yeah.
I guess because she won the Oscar, right, for it. So I
Yeah.
mean, I think maybe that's what they were kind of getting at. But I was like, she was definitely famous before this movie,
Oh
like was
yeah,
coming out.
definitely.
Yeah, but it's like this is the one
Interesting
that
though.
launched her career or whatever. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I don't know about that, but
Yeah.
that's all my thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Not much to say compared to
No, not
how
to
much
say.
we were raving about 12 Years a
About
Slave.
12 Years a Slave. Uh, Alrighty, well then I guess we'll just dive right into
Yeah.
it. So this movie, The Blind Side, it is based off of the 2006 book by author Michael Lewis called The Blind Side: Evolution of a Game, which is actually, I guess it's split, kind of sort of split into two parts. It's about Michael Orr and then also about, wow, I didn't write his name down, but the football player that they talk about in the beginning of the movie. The one that pretty much, I guess, well, I mean, if Sandra Bullock's narration at the beginning of the movie is to believed, like launched the importance of that position in football, I guess.
Oh, that guy. Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Already I'm thinking that we're gonna sound stupid talking about this movie because I don't know anything about football.
Same.
So I apologize. I'm not a football person, but you know what's kind of funny? Reading more because they don't really go. I mean, he goes off to college at the end of the movie, and then that's that, which I guess makes sense because the movie came out in 2009, and that's when he was drafted into the NFL. So there really wasn't anything left for them to say. But now, he's had, or he had a 8-year career in the NFL, which I guess is a long career for professional football players, which I didn't know. I guess the average is like 3 years, so
Oh,
good
wow.
for him.
Yeah, I didn't know that
But
either.
yeah. So, but it's actually kind of funny because I'm just speaking on the fact that I'm not a football person, but when we were in college at San Francisco State, woohoo, go Gators. That was probably the only time that I ever like slightly cared about football or watched a football game because I mean the 49ers were, I think they went to the Super Bowl like twice in the
Yeah, I
time
think
that
so.
we were going to school. But one of the times though I actually watched the game that he played in. He was on the Ravens at the time and they won against the 49ers. And I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, I actually watched that game that he played in, but I don't think I made the connection between him and the
Yeah,
game.
totally.
No.
That's crazy. I didn't realize that when this movie came out was kind of, I guess, like you said when he got drafted, and I didn't even realize that. I, for some reason, thought he was already out of the NFL by the time the film came out, but
Mhm. No, because at the very end of the movie, they like show the
Hmm.
draft, the draft.
Yeah.
Like I know what I'm talking about. The draft picks. I don't know.
The
Uh,
draft.
yeah, the draft. They showed it. Anyway, but let's rewind a little bit back to him as a young boy, I guess. In the movie, I don't think they ever say how old he is, right?
Well, they do mention because someone was like, "You might as well just adopt him," and they're like, and she was like, "Oh, there's no point because he's gonna turn 18 and whatever. Like
Mm,
basically coming up soon, he's gonna be turning 18, so there's no point." And they're like, "You're serious? Like I was just joking, kind of a thing." And
yeah. I don't know. I guess it's just kind of interesting because in my research, they're talking about how he was like 15, 16, or which I guess makes sense because high school. But I was just like, well, I think the actor at the time, I think he was like 23, I want to say, when he was playing this character. So I guess it makes sense that he doesn't look that young in the portrayal, but I'm just like, he looks old. And then I was like, do they even know how old he is? I don't know. Anyway, so the Tuohys, that name, the Tuohys, then 15-year-old daughter, Collins, which is funny because she's played by Lily Collins.
I
Collins
know.
was she was in one of Michael's classes and told her father about the big quiet new guy in her class, the real Sean Toohey, which he's played by Tim McGraw in the movie, which I thought was silly. Did first see Michael when he was sitting in the stands of the Briarcrest Gym, which is the real name of the Christian high school. But it was during a basketball practice, not Sean's daughter's volleyball game. And at that point, Michael was still academically ineligible to play on the basketball team, which they don't even talk about it all. I just realized, yeah, in real life, I guess we'll already in real life, he played basketball, did track and field and football, so he
Hmm.
was multi-talented, but they only focus on
Yes.
football in the movie. But he was ineligible at the time. Sean made an effort to get to know him and realized that he was hungry all day and that he had no money to buy lunch. So Sean started to pay for his school lunches. So I guess kind of setting the scene right off the bat, the movie is already changing the way that we even meet Michael or the family even gets in touch with Michael. Why? I don't know. I guess it was just more interesting to have Sandra Bullock pull over on the side of the
Well,
road. I don't
I
know.
I think they also just had to kind of condense it because from what I was saying is kind of they didn't just see him and then were like, let's help him. It took them a while to like kind of see him and then like I guess kind of have multiple interactions and then kind of decide to
Yeah,
invite him into the home or whatever.
I guess that is true. Yeah, so speaking of the car scene, Leanne said there were a few artistic liberties taken in that scene, which looking into this, I guess it's just kind of interesting, and they do talk about how they clearly are Republican and super Christian and stuff like that, but it's it's just the concept of them taking a black boy in and like all, and then the scene where his tutor's like, oh well, I'm Democrat, and how that was like
Mm-hmm.
such a big deal, and so even just like looking further into this and Leanne goes on to Mike Huckabee on Fox News, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
part of
Dude,
me.
I had to look him up too and she definitely follows Ivanka Trump and I was like,
Gosh.
and I was like, mm,
I know it's rough because it's just like they're good people, but it's just like there's so many things that you
yeah.
support that aren't great.
Hmm.
Anywho, unlike the rainy nighttime scene in the movie, the true story reveals that Leanne's encounter with Michael on the side of the road really happened on a cold morning during Thanksgiving break. She and her husband watched Michael get off a city bus in the snow wearing only cut-off blue jeans and a t-shirt. Like in the movie, Michael was on his way to the school gym in order to escape the weather and find warmth. In reality, Leanne didn't offer Michael a place to stay immediately. Instead, their encounter on the side of the road on that snowy November morning in 2002 prompted her to pick up Michael up at the high school the next day and take him shopping. She couldn't ignore that he had been out in the cold in cut-off jeans and a t-shirt, the same outfit he was seen wearing every day. So, like you said, it's like their relationship is definitely more gradual. She wasn't right off the bat like, "Come stay in our house and stay
Hmm.
forever." In reality, it took months after the roadside encounter before the Tui family welcomed Michael into their home. For months, Michael actually continued staying with Tony Henderson, aka Big Tony, the mechanic whose son also attended Briarcrest Christian School, which he's at the very beginning of the movie where he's talking about, oh, my mother's dying wish was for my son to get a Christian education, but also you should take his friend. So that was true to life. He was living with Tony at the time, crashing on his couch. For months after that, at least five different families, both white and black, provided Michael with a place to stay after his coaches realized that he didn't have a home. This eventually included the Toohey family. He'd stay here once in a while and then he'd leave, said Sean Toohey, and then he seemed more comfortable to stay. With regard to the Toohey family, the real Michael Oher said, when I moved in with Leanne and Sean, I felt loved, like a part of a family. In the other houses, I didn't feel like part of a family. I didn't feel like they wanted me there. I mean, like you said, is condensing time, but it's kind of interesting too that they said that his teachers and his coaches kind of noticed that he didn't have anywhere to be, which I feel like, I mean, there's that one teacher that kind of takes interest in him and like his education and stuff, but like generally in the movie, it just seemed like they didn't really have that great of a thoughts about him. They're just kind of
Yeah.
just like, he's dumb. Like it's just
Yeah,
like,
like they
geez,
didn't want to deal with him.
pretty much, yeah.
Well, and also the film, they basically make it seem like that's his first time on the campus when he was there for a couple of years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that too. Yeah. Prior to Briarcrest, Michael had been to 11 schools in 9 years, often skipping class. During one year at Westwood High School, he was absent for 51 days. By his freshman year of high school, his grade point average was .06. It was easy for me to say, I'm going to hang out with these guys and do drugs and not go to school, Michael said, but I decided I didn't want to do it. I wanted to be something in life. That was one thing that I was kind of interesting because I feel like the gang aspect is pretty big in the movie, but from my research, it kind of was like half true type of a thing. Like he wasn't as involved or really, I don't know, it didn't seem like the gang presence was as big, I guess, in real life as it is in the movie. So,
Well, I think he was around, like it was where he was, like how he lived in
yeah.
Hurt Village or whatever. It was there, but I think he said that he just kind of stayed away from it. He didn't like involve himself. And he said he only actually knew one person who was kind of involved in that. And I think that person, he would actually take him sometimes to the Tui's house to also kind of hang out. And I guess he was a pretty nice guy, even though I guess he was in a gang, because they said that he was just pretty respectable and that he didn't like ask for anything or take anything from them or anything like that. So
Speaking back on Tony Henderson, the guy who kind of sort of really put the word out about Mike. He, in real life, runs an athletic program that mentors teens in his neighborhood. And recognizing Michael's unstable home life, he took Michael in. He was a good kid, Tony recalls. He was real quiet and especially stayed to himself. Like in the Blind Side movie, Tony took his teenage son Steven to be enrolled in the school and also brought Michael along with them. So, and he also in real life worked as a mechanic. So, according to the book The Blind Side, the football coach at Briarcrest, Hugh Freeze, these names, Hugh Freeze, referred to as Bert Cotton in the movie, did encourage his colleagues to accept Michael's application. So he kind of saw the potential, which is kind of interesting because I feel like in the movie compared to my research, they kind of make the coach out to seem like a worse guy than he was, kind of, which is strange. I don't know why they would do that. But
just drama.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, because it seemed like, again, like the coach didn't really care too much about Michael. I mean, he really wanted him on his team, so much so that he was going to vouch for this kid that didn't really have any background to speak of, but in real life, he cared way more about him than than they let on, and really was vouching for him. But yeah, it's kind of weird. So yeah, as I was saying, due to his poor and nearly non-existent academic record as of 2002, the principal insisted that he participate in a homeschool program for a few months first to get his grades up before they accepted him into the high school. So Michael was a sophomore when he came to the Christian high school. He began staying regularly at the Tuohys in the fall of his junior year in 2003. He remained with the Tuohys until he left for college at Ole Miss, Officially adopted by the family, Michael returned often to visit, sometimes bringing players from the Ole Miss team with him. Michael was 16 years old when Leanne and Sean first welcomed him into his home, or into their home, sorry. I mean, they really, yeah, they just really skip over a lot of stuff, and it seemed like there were definitely that was like one of because he's Michael has since written books, his own books about it, and it definitely seemed like there were a lot more people involved in his upbringing than this movie let on, which I'm sure we'll probably discuss when we get more into into Leanne.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about so kind of the conflict of the film is when Michael Oher is being investigated by the NCAA people trying to be like they're what do they call them? Pushers? No, not pushers. Boosters,
Oh,
boosters.
boosters.
I'm like,
Yeah.
words are not.
I'm just like Mean Girls. I'm a pusher.
So they are basically accusing the Tuohys of being boosters and kind of getting kids off the street and using them to kind of funnel them into the colleges that they want them to go into. So, of course, since that's like kind of one of the main conflicts, I wanted to look into that and see what was really going on. So, did the investigation really happen? Yes, it did. The NCAA investigator Joyce Thompson, had a different name in the film. Pretty much everyone had different names in the film except for the
Yeah.
Tuohys and Michael. So she visited the family several times, interviewing both Michael Oher and Sean Tuohy. She was particularly concerned with how Michael was going to become NCAA eligible, given that his high school transcript still contained 8Fs. She wanted to know more about the Brigham Young Study Program, which I'll kind of talk more about in a minute. But Michael wasn't speaking up, and Sean Tuohy claimed that he didn't know the details since Michael's tutor, Sue Mitchell, had been handling it. The NCAA investigator was also interested in discovering if the Tuohys had pressured Michael into attending their alma mater, Ole Miss, which is similar to what is depicted in the movie. Joyce Thompson did say that the way the interview was portrayed in the film wasn't true. So she was kind of saying that in the film, the her person who I don't remember what her name was in the film, but the person who was depicting her was kind of more intimidating and stern. But in
Yeah, she was
reality,
aggressive. That's
yeah,
scary.
yeah, but in reality, I guess she says she doesn't really do her investigations in that way, or she doesn't approach them in that way because, of course, these are children, so she's not trying to like
Yeah.
intimidate and scare children. So she says she would could just kind of go to their houses where they feel comfortable and then kind of just ask them questions and interview them in that sense and just be friendly. She wasn't scary, which I was like, yeah, that makes more sense. Why are you going to talk to some kids? Like, of course, people aren't going to be speaking up and whatever. But so, yeah, that was basically that. So now what had interested me was when I was looking into, because I'm like, why was he even investigated in the first place? Like, I know they said the F thing, but in the film, they made it seem more of like, oh, they're being boosting him into the thing. So I
Yeah.
kind of wanted to see, I guess, kind of what maybe triggered the investigation. So, so how was he able to raise his grades in order to meet the GPA requirements to get into the college? And I guess he kind of had to go through some like loopholes, and some of the stuff wasn't considered necessarily ethical, at least according to this
Hmm.
one journalist who wrote this article about the whole situation. The journalist's name was Mike Harris. So he said Michael had nothing but D's and F's until the end of his junior year. However, he made all A's and B's during his senior year, but with no more classes to take, he could at best only finish with a 2.05 grade point average. This was a problem since the NCAA required a 2.65 GPA. Regarding Michael and the Tuohy's questionable academic efforts to fix the problem, columnist Harris focuses on the 10-day internet courses that Michael took his senior year from Brigham Young University in order to replace existing F's on his transcript with A's. So Harris refers to the courses as, quote, an NCAA eligibility trick. The author of
Hmm.
The Blind Side book labels the practice as the Great Mormon Grade Grub. So Sean, yeah, I'm like, these terms. Basically, honestly, it kind of reminded, even though it's not necessarily the same thing, but it reminded me of that whole scandal with the mom who kind of bought her, I forget the names of them, the actress who bought her daughter's
Oh,
way into,
yeah, yeah. Lori Laughlin
yeah,
and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the other
Olivia,
one, but yeah.
Olivia Jade or whatever her name is. And then the
Oh, the
other
daughter,
lady,
yeah.
yeah. It kind of, I mean, it's not the exact same thing, but it kind of, I don't know, reminded me of it because to me, it does seem like kind of like loopholey and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
so Sean Toohey had gotten the idea from a friend, and the effort was being managed by Michael's tutor, Sue Mitchell. So basically, he had to take these classes in order to kind of replace his grades. And so, and it's funny because Sean Tui, when the NCAA lady was at like, questioning him, and he was like, I don't know anything. Sue Mitchell is the one who's like handling all this. But I'm like, clearly you did because so Sean Tui selected a series of 10-day online BYU character courses for Michael to complete over the summer with Sue Mitchell's help. All that each course required students to do was to read a few brief passages from famous works or speeches and then answer 5 questions on it. A's that Michael earned in these character courses could be used to replace existing F's that he had earned in high school English courses. Sean's strategy for Michael almost didn't work because even after he had been accepted to Ole Miss, the NCAA said that his GPA was still a bit too low to play college football. Sean quickly enrolled him in another BYU internet character course, and on August 1st, 2005, the NCAA finally accepted him. So basically, he was, and like, when I was reading about these courses, I'm like, how does this even like a thing? Like, I've never heard of anything like that before. So
Me either.
literally, you just have to read a passage and then answer questions, and then that replaces your grades. I'm like, that's insanity to me.
That
And
is
so when I
crazy.
was reading that, I was like, oh, maybe he should have like, I don't know. It seems kind of fishy to me, but I don't know. I guess it's okay since they let him do it and everything. But I was like, that can't possibly be. Even though, like, yeah, the NCAA was doing in the investigation too, from like that reading that too, it kind of made it seem like they were almost okay with it and not even encouraging it, but they're just like, oh, he still has to do this. And then, like, so then they just enroll him in another class and they're like, okay, yeah, he's good. And I'm just like, what? No. And it seemed like when she was doing her investigation, she wasn't necessarily like hardcore questioning it, like, oh, like you can't do this or whatever. They're just like, how is he gonna make it up? Like kind of a thing. It wasn't like this doesn't look right. It was more like, how are we gonna get him to that point where he can be accepted, kind of a thing. At least
Hmm.
that was my interpretation of it when I was reading it. And then I kind of wanted to quickly discuss kind of what Michael or the real Michael Oher thinks of the film. There are a few things that Michael Oher didn't like about the film. First, I mean, I think there's probably more than the three that I'm going to talk about, but these are kind of the ones that seem to be common in the articles and stuff that I was reading about it. So first, he didn't like the way they portrayed him to be a shy, timid kid because in reality, he had a much bigger personality and was more on the bubbly side. I guess he was known for like always laughing and joking around and stuff like that. And he wasn't as shy as, and timid. I guess he didn't like that they made him seem very like afraid all the time. Second, he didn't like the way the film simplified his struggles growing up. I think he feels like his whole story wasn't really told because they left so much of his early life struggles out. But like I said, they
Hmm.
kind of did that in order to kind of condense it all for the film. But I can see, like, I don't know, like, we'll probably talk about this later on too, but I definitely feel like it wasn't necessarily a story about him because of that reason as
Hmm.
well. And lastly, I think one of the biggest things he didn't like about the film was how they portrayed him not knowing how to play football in reality or had known how to play football essentially his whole life. He said he's been studying it since he was a kid. He was an athletic individual, as we already mentioned. He was in a lot of different sports, and he was also pretty adamant that Leanne Tui didn't help him teach, didn't teach him how to play football as they portrayed in the film. One of the interviews I watched of him, he repeated it twice that she did not teach him how to play, which I thought was hilarious because he like really wanted to make that abundantly clear that she did not teach him how to
Yeah.
play. And I was like, yeah. But I can understand why
Funny.
because I read something else that was saying that because of the way he was portrayed in the film, it kind of affected him outside of the movie and it kind of he felt like it downplayed all of the hard work and effort
Mm.
he himself put into learning the sport and kind of overcoming all these struggles of being homeless and like all that stuff. So like yeah, he had help, but it's like him as an individual also had to overcome those things in order to get where he was at. So I think he kind of felt like that downplayed it. And then also he felt like it affected him in his NFL career because I think people were kind of more focused on the movie than his actual career. And he made it seem like people might kind of were even questioning on whether or not he knew how to play football and like maybe if he was like a bust and he didn't really like she didn't deserve it I guess to be on the field. So because of this, like I think you mentioned it, how he wrote his own book. So he kind of
Hmm.
wanted to tell it his story and his side of the things to kind of to
Set the
dispel, I
story
guess.
straight.
Yeah, set the story straight. There you go. I'm like dispel. I don't know the words again. And his autobiography, which is titled "I Beat the Odds from Homelessness to the Blind Side and Beyond." So yeah, he just set the record straight in that book. But recently, I guess his tone has kind of changed on how he views the film because he sees it more as now how we were saying it's kind of is an inspirational story, even though it's not necessarily a true story. I think he sees the good that it's kind of helped people. And because of that, I think he's kind of warming up more to the film and like seeing it for that it's done for people, which I mean, I guess that's all you can do, even though like you can just see it not as necessarily a story about your life anymore, since it doesn't seem like he doesn't really feel like it's about his life. So it's like just see it as like, a very good inspirational sports
Yeah.
movie. Which I mean, and he said it's helped a lot of people, so I think he like thinks it's good because of that. But he's very adamant. Leanne Tui did not teach him how to play football.
And I'm sure now that he's like retired from football, I'm sure it's like easier to separate himself now a little more from the movie because kind of like what you were saying, what I saw was that he kind of, because of the movie, people were very focused on him and like had expectations for him. Like, even though it was like his rookie year and this was like his
Mhm.
first year playing pro football, he kind of had like this magnifying glass on him because of this
Yeah.
backstory, which he doesn't even completely agree with the betrayal. So it's
Yeah.
just kind of like unnecessary focus that no other, rookie player would have, coming
Mhm.
in. So I think he wasn't a big fan of that, understandably.
Yeah, totally. I would be upset too, especially if the movie's kind of, I don't know, I feel like it's portraying it as it's his story, but I feel like it's not really his story. I feel like it's more of like Leanne Tui's story or whatever. I went online because I wanted to see if they all still follow each other and everything, and they all still follow each other on Instagram at least. But it
I was
was
just
weird.
on their Instagram too.
Yeah, because I was like, wait, these people are like here and now. Like I feel like most
Yeah.
people that we talk about, they obviously wouldn't have an Instagram. So like
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln's not gonna have an Instagram, you know? And
Oh
and so I
god.
went and looked it up, and he's like launching some app or something to help people, and because I wanted to
Yeah,
see if
that
they
was cool.
post about each other, and he doesn't really post anything about them. And I went on to Collins and SJ's Instagram, and there's like a post or two that I've seen of them, but there weren't like very many. Not that I mean, I don't post anything about my siblings, so I mean, it's not like I'm expecting that. But and then I went on to Leanne's, and of course she had like pictures of him, and I guess she's doing some other thing where she helps, like I think they said at the end of the film how she helps kids who are kind of have the same backstory as Michael to kind of help them get into school and stuff like that. So I think she's still
Yeah.
doing that, and she seems very more not braggy, but she posts a lot more. A parent who brags.
Yeah, she seems kind of like an influencer
Yeah.
type. Like, yeah, it's kind of interesting. But it seems like she's like doing some sort of, I don't know, like foster outreach thing where she'll like post about a kid to find them a home and stuff like that, which is an interesting way to go about it,
Yeah.
but I mean, good for her. And like you kind of mentioned, yeah, he just recently in like December or whatever, this last December, launched that app where pretty much it's just like you can go on there. Like, I was like looking into this because I'm just like, dang, that is a good idea. And like, and it's cool because it very much, stems from what happened to him and how he got where he is today. It's an app where you can go on there, and if you have, like shoes or something you want to donate somewhere, you can post all the things that you have to donate to somebody. And then if you're in need of something, you can go on there and just like search what you're in need of, and it'll like play or match you up with somebody who has that item. So you can, find somebody in your same town or wherever. And so that's kind of cool. I
Oh
mean,
wow.
that's smart.
Yeah, I didn't really. I saw that he was launching it, but honestly, I didn't really look into what it was exactly. I was just like, "Oh, cool, he's doing something or whatever." And then, because I'm just
Yeah.
trying to, me, I'm trying to get the tea. I'm like, "Oh, do they post about each other? Do they follow each other?" Oh, and also that's true too. He is a family of like 12 brothers and sisters,
Yeah.
and
But yeah, the only thing that I saw really about his other siblings was that his older brother, which I think it's the same brother that they show him at the restaurant, was there when he was during the draft pick thing. His older
yeah.
brother was there. So that's the only sibling I know of that he like keeps,
Mm-hmm.
or biological sibling. Oh, I saw that SJ did not end up going to Ole Miss like everybody else did. Collins did. That was the other thing, that they're actually like the same year, same everything. Like I think they in the movie they're like a year apart, it seems, or a couple of
Mm-hmm.
years apart, but both Collins and Michael were the same age. So they went to Ole Miss at the same time, and I think she was a cheerleader at Ole Miss like her
Yeah.
mom. Yeah.
Oh, and that was one thing too that I saw, that how in the film how they were making like all these promises to SJ about what he's gonna get out of the whole
Yeah.
situation of whatever. I guess that was obviously like really exaggerated. I think they said that the only thing SJ really, well, in this interview, the dad, Sean, was like, no, that did happen. But then SJ himself was like, kind of like, no, that didn't happen. And so I'm like, okay. But I guess he did get some like personal, what is it? tour of something
Like a
or of
tour.
another, but it wasn't like anything as crazy as what they made it seem like in the film. Also, that was
Walking out on the field and
also,
stuff.
I didn't find anything about this, but I thought it was interesting because so you know how in the film they were talking about how Michael had like big protective instincts basically. I'm like,
Mhm.
first of all, how do you test for that on like a standardized test? They were
I
like
know, I
showing her
thought
this
that was
stuff.
so weird.
Yeah, and then second of all, like I don't know, it just seemed just like sort of random for them to. I mean, I guess they try to use that as something in the film, but it's like none of
Yeah.
that. Anything I saw, there was nothing of that mentioned about his like aptitude for protectiveness.
Oh, but the
But
car accident was real
oh
though.
yeah, that
Yeah,
happened.
and yeah, he did put his arm out to like stop the airbag. So
And
he is very protective by nature, but they can't test for it
oh, and I
as
guess
far as we
also
can tell.
too, so you know how in the film the football player, I guess that really did happen sort of too, how he kind of picked him up off the field that happened. And there was something else that I saw that was like, oh, when he was getting racist taunts, did he like just basically do nothing and just be quiet? And they're like, no, in reality, he would just like flub him off or something if like if they were doing that, which I'm like, okay, that makes more sense. But yeah, so I guess I mean, speaking of racial tension, so what do you think? So that was one of the things that I feel like came up a lot in different articles about this film was basically if the racial tensions were accurately portrayed in the film as they were in real life. Because I think some people were kind of saying the like I think it just has to do with the whole things of like him they're not really showing Michael's story, I guess, and like the things
Hmm.
he had to face going to like a predominantly white school and living with a all white family and stuff like that. So what were your thoughts on that? Because I mean, I agree.
I mean, yeah, I guess I didn't really think too much about it until like I had read your notes for this episode about how it seemed like it was more Leanne's story than his. And then after reading that, I'm like, yeah, I guess it really is because it is really told from her point of view and so I was like, yeah, that is kind of interesting. But
Mhm.
from what I was reading, and again, Collins and Michael being the same age, because there was kind of like I felt like with like Leanne's friends and stuff like that, there was kind of like a weird hesitation with bringing Michael into their family and stuff. But at least from what I could tell with the stuff at school, with like Collins's friends and stuff, it wasn't really there. There wasn't like a weird, awkward air about, Collins hanging out with Michael or anything. I mean, she went so far as to drop all her AP classes and enroll in his school schedule so that she could help him out, and it wasn't unusual and her friends didn't care. And so I mean there was some comments from Leanne's friends, but like the stuff that they showed in school wasn't really anything. So I thought that was kind of interesting, again,
Mhm.
making up drama that wasn't there.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I saw that was interesting because I think the main thing was basically how like the whole like white savior type of thing, like taking like a lot of
Yeah.
these stories that are in films are like of white people taking in these black people and like kind of helping them out of their poverty and all that stuff. Which I guess Michael doesn't agree with either. He's just saying like someone was helping me out of homelessness, like who cares like what color their skin was like. So he doesn't agree with that. But I think one thing that I guess was kind of interesting was that, and they don't really touch on, was that because like obviously we like they even said Republicans. So I think that's why I think they were saying like the whole racial tension wasn't accurately portrayed, at least for me, because I guess Leanne too came from a racist family, like growing up, and I guess she was like saying like I don't know how she became different from them, but it was very recent. She knew that I guess him being in their family was going to take time for their whole family to accept, but eventually they did. And yeah, I just thought that was interesting. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
like I mean, I guess why I know why they wouldn't include it in the film because that's not really, I guess, the point that the film was trying to make.
Yeah.
But I can see why that would receive criticisms because it's a reality of the situation, and they just chose to leave it out. But yeah, I thought it was interesting. I guess one of the things, so you know how they took the family portrait with Michael in it for Christmas or whatever. I guess one of her cousins
Hmm.
or someone like that called her up and he was like, I don't mean to be whatever, but who's the black boy in your Christmas
Oh
photo or
gosh.
whatever?
And I'm wondering though, I mean, thinking about it now and looking further into Leanne as a person, I'm just wondering if that just kind of has to comes down to like a personality thing. Because I mean, Michael says that he's not as like reserved and shy as they make him out to be. Like he also, I don't know, it doesn't really seem like he is one to I wouldn't say brag, but boast or whatever. And Leanne, it seems definitely to be the person kind of wanting the limelight type of a thing. And she definitely seems like a go-getter type of person. So I'm kind of wondering if the choice to kind of make it more from her perspective, if that's why, because that's just her personality, and it's just easier to get her side of the story. She very probably, I would assume, and doing research for this movie, I would hope that they would actually talk to the family more. But I'm sure she was probably at the forefront of this is what happened, this is how it
Yeah,
goes, and they were probably
definitely.
just like, well, let's just tell it from her point of view because she knows what's what. And that kind of makes me wonder how involved. I mean, I guess he probably wasn't even that involved, I would assume, with the making of this movie. Hmm.
Mhm.
But
But I mean, they did a good job at making it entertaining. I think that's what it was. And so, I mean, for what it was okay, you know? I think he would definitely deserve to have an actual story from like his whole perspective because I didn't read the book, but when the interview that I watched him, the lady was saying that his book was actually really like impactful because of all the shit he had to go through in his life and everything and all of the challenges and stuff he had to overcome.
I would assume if there isn't already, that there's probably going to be like a sports center or whatever. They
Yeah,
do
that's
those
true.
like sports
Hmm.
documentaries. Is Yeah, so I'm sure if there isn't one already, they're probably going to make one, and I
Yeah.
would assume that's going to be like a bazillion times more
Yeah,
accurate.
probably.
I did find it interesting that Sandra Bullock in this movie got so much praise when I was looking at the reviews. Like it's decently rated among people watching it, but the Metacritic score, which is always the very critical score, it's not great. It's like a
Yeah.
C or something like that. And I was reading the reviews of the publications that were not a fan, and they definitely were leaning towards like what you were saying, that it was very much like the white savior complex. And why would this movie about him, it seemed like it was just kind of God, I can't think of the word, but I don't know, just yeah, just very much praising this white family for coming in and changing this boy's life type of thing. And I think a lot of people really did have a big problem with that. And I don't know. I guess watching it, I didn't think much of it until I looked into the reviews, because like you said, it was just more entertaining than it seemed factual, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess like when I was watching it, I was entertained, but I didn't really like take it as fact. So I'm just like thinking about it now. I'm just like, well, it probably was different than it probably wasn't. This probably isn't how it went down.
Yeah,
Which
totally.
now researching, it's like 50-50
I
it
think it's
seems.
just the way that they like market the movie. It's like, because even like the thing, it's like all this stuff about Michael, but then it's like I feel like compared to Sandra Bullock's character, he doesn't have as much screen time in the whole film as her character, so Leanne
Definitely.
Toohey. So I think it's just like, okay, if it's not going to be solely about his story, then like write more about that, like market it in that way. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, don't make people want to come to this film thinking that they're going to watch this movie about this black teenager overcoming all these things and like with the aid of this family. But then when you get there, it's actually something else. But I don't know. I think that might have maybe been what
Yeah.
also people are kind of upset about. It's like you're using this person's story as a way to get people in, but then you're delivering something else about this like white lady. So IDK.
Yeah.
But yeah, because that's what one thing too that I read. I guess his book actually like corrects a lot of the things that the film left unanswered or unresolved or kind of misconstrued and all that stuff. So if you want to know the real story, read the book. We didn't read the book because we're the internet historians, so everything we got has to be off the internet. But like that's why.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so thanks for joining us this week on the Internet Historians. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us on all of the podcasting places and also on YouTube, where sometimes I post the YouTube videos if I can remember.
Sometimes.
And make sure you give us a rating and subscribe to that YouTube channel if you're there. We would also love to connect with you, so make sure you also follow us on Instagram, where I also sometimes post about our episodes and stuff like that.
You're being real this time around. Sometimes.
Yeah, but like I for sure give you those pictures when the episode goes live. So like at least you got that. So yeah, next week we'll be discussing Dr. Don Shirley from the movie Green Book. So don't forget to tune in. Thanks again, and we will see you next week.
Bye.